We're here today with our first ever guest. It's very exciting. Outspoken Samantha. We're glad to have you on.
And I think there's a disconnect between obviously the people that just want to get out and be angry at what Trump is doing versus understanding the moves that he's making and who it benefits.
Hello, and welcome to the Pop Culture Contrarian podcast with Thomas, Sterling, and Andrew.
Hello.
Hey, guys.
Before we get started, make sure to go to patriotpost.us and subscribe there to our free daily newsletter. That's the best way you can support us. The second best way you can support us is to go to patriotshop.us and buy something like this great Gulf of America t-shirt I'm wearing. We've got stickers, we've got books, we've got all sorts of stuff. Go check that out. And we're excited to introduce our episode. We're here today with our first ever guest. It's very exciting. Outspoken Samantha. We're glad to have you on. You want to tell us a little bit about what you wrote about for the Patriot Post today?
Absolutely. So this week I focused on, yes, the crackdown that is going on in Washington, D.C., particularly with the crime level, despite the well-informed reports that the crime in D.C. is just fine. But not just that aspect of it, because we've heard a lot of arguments for and against it, but the people that seem to be in favor of it versus those that are protesting against it. The contrast between the people that seem to want this to happen and those that seem to be particularly angry about it. And I think there's some important distinctions to be made there. So
we talked about this a little bit a couple weeks ago, but what we were talking about is the people who are grateful about it. The people who are really excited about it. And it seems to be long-term DC residents. You saw lots of videos of people making TikTok videos of like, I'm out on the street walking, my morning walk, and I don't feel in danger. Isn't this nice?
Yeah, I noticed one woman in particular was riding with her windows down through downtown DC and saying, I have never felt this safe in my entire life.
Yeah.
Which is just amazing.
But I think your article, Samantha, is about the people who are upset about it. So residents seem to like it. Who doesn't like it?
Well, if you've seen the videos of the protests, I know on the right, we don't like to particularly focus on skin color, but sometimes it's a factor that's hard to ignore. And I'm noticing that in these groups of people, it's a very, pale aesthetic. People, a lot of raging white liberals. And I think in this case, that kind of matters because it seems to be a lot of people that don't actually live in the area. I did see a couple of videos of people saying that they believe that these people don't live in Washington, D.C., but they're all too ready to protest against keeping it safe. And I think there's a disconnect between obviously the people that just want to get out and be angry at what Trump is doing versus understanding the moves that he's making and who it benefits. And they don't really seem to care a whole lot. So it does seem to be these privileged white liberals that like to lecture us about white privilege, yet demonstrate their privilege on a daily basis, that don't have to live with the consequences of saying, we don't want these crackdowns. We don't want crime to end. Even though that's not exactly what they're saying, indirectly, that's what they're saying. And it's easy to say that when you get to go home to a safe neighborhood patrolled by the police that you claim to be the enemy. And you don't have to, you take for granted the fact that you can drive around with your windows down on a daily basis, and you don't think about the people that's actually a luxury for. There's just a very stark contrast between these people and the Black community, because that's a large percentage of the population in DC, saying, hey, this is nice. Rampant crime is not normal.
That's exactly right. And I think even
Muriel
Bowser. Yeah, I think she's come out and said, thank you. This crime crackdown is actually nice.
87% reduction in carjackings in Washington, D.C. And we greatly appreciate the surge of officers that enhance what MPD has been able to do in this city.
There were actually people that were upset about Muriel Bowser saying thank you.
I mean, I think the elephant in the room regarding this is not so much that they're opposed to getting rid of crime, but it's because they want to oppose almost anything Trump. Anything that Trump would do that would be successful, that would make him look good, they're going to be opposed to.
And, you know, guys, I've told you two this already, but Samantha, let me know what you think. I think if Trump can successfully pin the anti-crime, you know, law and order badge to himself, I think in 2026 and 2028, Republicans are just going to walk into office again, because reducing crime is going to be immensely popular everywhere it happens. It's one of the key things that holds people back from achieving their dreams.
Well, you know, law and order, that is the function of government. It's one of the few actual functions of government that we should expect.
Right. I mean, and should we go so far as to say maybe we're entitled to it a little bit?
Wow.
I mean, entitled is not a word that I love, but that might be one thing where I'm like, this is something that we should expect. This is not reserved for the people that live in safe communities. This is something that everybody should expect. And I honestly think, and I know you guys have probably touched on the DC crime subject a lot already, but I think that what Democrats fear most is that people aren't going to settle for chaos now. They've come to accept this as a normal way of life, and believing these leaders like Muriel Bowser or whoever progressive politician is in office in basically saying that we can't fix this problem. We need more money, or using it to demand whatever it is that they want. Whether it be legislation or more funding or whatever it is. And they've just come to accept that these things are this way because we can't control it. And now that they've seen something can actually be done, they're not going to accept this in the future. And Democrats are either going to have to choose to lower crime themselves, or hopefully they will get voted out of office.
That's exactly right. And I pulled up a quote here from Brandon Johnson recently. He's the mayor of Chicago. And it's just so indicative of the entire Democrat movement. We cannot incarcerate our way out of violence. The addiction on jails and incarceration in this country, we have moved past that. It is racist, it is immoral, it is unholy, and it is not the way to drive violence down. Actually, I think arresting criminals is exactly the way to drive violence down, Brandon.
I mean, I think a lot of us can agree that aside from our moral compass, not going to jail is a driving factor of like, hey, maybe I don't want to break the law.
Yeah, imagine that.
I do think there's an interesting element here in how the Democrats, the politicians at least, work. They like to pick out the causes of problems, like the gun violence is a classic example, that they can't really actually present any real solution to, but they can harp on it constantly. Mm-hmm. They do it with climate change, same thing. We got to do stuff in regards to, you know, cutting emissions and everything like that so we save the planet. But it's not anything that you can actually impact any real change on. Mm-hmm. But it works for them to keep focusing the attention on this being the cause so they don't actually have to produce anything.
And, you know, I really also find it interesting that so many of these Democrat-held cities, you know, poverty is pretty widespread. And
what have they done about that?
Well, what they've done about it has been creating a welfare state and incentivizing people to not rise out from desperation and to destroy the family, fatherlessness, all of these driving factors that actually really impact why crime is happening. You know, there's no fathers in these homes. People are incentivized to stay in a low standard. And when you're in a state of poverty, desperation becomes a factor, and people are more inclined to move towards violence or criminal activities. The things that they actually are doing are creating the problem even worse.
You know, kind of in that same vein, when we have people like Brandon Johnson coming out and speaking against this, or whoever else is insane enough to say that this is a bad idea, people on the left, particularly in their criticisms of what we're doing, they like to, and this is a point I make in the article as well, they're pretending that we're abandoning our principles as conservatives, that we don't want small government anymore, that we want the military to come in and take over and to have this military state and have, you know, bigger government control. And at the heart of this, we're just saying, we don't want this. We don't want the situation to be so bad where we even have to have this conversation. But if Brandon Johnson were to come, or Muriel Bowser were to come to the conversation and say, these are the solutions that we're going to implement, that we're going to start doing so that we don't need the National Guard, I would be 100% in favor of that conversation. It's like, we're against the National Guard coming in. this is what we're going to do to stop this problem ourselves. I don't want the National Guard in there. I don't want military presence, but they've created this problem and clearly aren't interested in solutions. So what choice do we have? We have to protect people's rights, and that includes their right to safety when they've failed.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah.
I think married to this is this narrative regarding the culture, inner city culture, and somehow crime or the expression of crime is somehow uncomfortably tied to that. You would have cops come in or law enforcement come in to suppress that. They've got this weird, uncomfortable marriage with it kind of being, well, it's an expression of, that, like they say, black culture or something like this. And so they're trying to have it both ways. On the one side, they're trying to say, no, this is bad. We got to get rid of this crime problem. But on the other hand, they say we can't get rid of the crime with cops because that's racist, and enforcing a law against this would be racist. So you're kind of left with,
It's like an impasse.
Yeah. So either you admit this is crime, and no matter what culture it comes from, it's wrong, or you say it's not crime. And I think, they're in this weird, they don't want it in their neighborhoods, but at the same time, they'll defend it in other neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
I always think the issue that they make about racism demonstrates just how racist they truly are at the heart of it.
Yeah.
They argue that they can't do anything about it because racism, which implies that people that are committing these crimes can't help it because of their skin color.
Right.
And if we enforce the law, that's also racist because we're oppressing them because they don't know any better. So either way, you're flipping this coin. You're basically talking down to these people and telling them that they are incapable of making independent choices that better their situation. And I don't know if you've seen those episodes of Jubilee, Surrounded.
And today, I am surrounded by 20 Black conservatives.
Those are fun.
Very entertaining.
They are entertaining. And I don't remember specifically which episode it was, but there was, this Black girl with the curly hair talking about how Black people are oppressed and how, they have a higher crime rate. They end up in jail more. And I'm looking at this woman and I'm thinking, why aren't you in jail?
My first claim is it is undeniable that reparations are just and necessary. My next claim is that Black on Black crime is a result of underinvestment and over-policing. My next claim is systemic racism isn't a theory. It's our lived reality backed by data and history. My final claim is Black conservatism fails to meet the needs of the working class.
Why aren't you committing crime? Like, you come from the same ancestry, from the same oppression, from the same, descendants of slavery. Apparently all Black people are just descendants of slavery. What makes you different? And that nips the argument in the bud. It's like, you have demonstrations every day. You have examples every day of people from this community that are capable of not following what they claim that they don't have a choice to get out of, if that makes sense.
I think a lot of what's happening is Democrats had this idea of you can't incarcerate your way out of crime. And it was novel enough. It was like, what if we try, some other option? We don't incarcerate them. We do X, Y, and Z, whatever the Democrats outlined. And it was a novel enough idea that I think for a while people were like, okay, let's give it a shot. Well, we've given it a shot. It doesn't work. And another novel idea, and maybe this is a pivot to another part of our topic here, another one of our topics here, the idea that men can become women.
Yeah.
This is one of those novel ideas that is novel because it's so obviously not true. And yet people were so willing to push it for a while. And thankfully it's becoming less and less popular. But we have seen an increase in, I guess, trans violence. We saw this Minneapolis shooter last week, which was absolutely horrible. Yeah. I think, to me, says this is a crazy idea we should never have tried. It's ruining lives.
Well, and I think a lot of us could probably see from the beginning how badly this could go, because there's so many narratives that have broken down around this. I mean, essentially it's the idea that we're just letting people be their true selves and just have the freedom to express themselves however they want. And that traditional values have been the things that have been oppressing people and making them miserable. Yeah. And that there's no connection between your mind and your body and all of these things, putting this in every nook and cranny of society. So you're not just allowing people to naturally grow into something that they might feel. You're actually teaching people that this is the norm, and identifying as just a boy or a girl is not the norm. Yeah. So we're seeing the growth, the increase in this violence because you have encouraged this disconnect between the mind and the body in people that never needed to happen. You're not allowing this natural progression for the small percentage of people that might actually feel that way. You're actually trying to encourage people to do something, to have an illness that they don't have. Yeah. And we could see that from the beginning, and now we're seeing the results of that. I mean, yeah, transgender or transsexuals, whatever you want to call them, years ago have always existed. No one's denying that. No one's denying that intersex people have existed. But the vast majority of people find stability in understanding who they are, and that's rooted in their mind and their biology being connected. And so we're seeing people that are clearly becoming more and more broken, and we want to talk about mental illness. Is this exacerbating the issue? And I think it goes without saying, yes, it is.
The next level of this social contagion with a key root being detached from identity. Of course, this is in the case of gender, but our children are being told by the left that there is no God, that your nation is terrible, you need to be not proud of your history, that there is no truth, truth is relative, and all of these things are causing just distress in young people and being unmoored. It's a disjointed society and civilization. So I see this as a symptom of an underlying problem. More and more kids see, okay, I don't have an identity and I can get some attention and maybe some love if I am this way. Yeah. And so then it spreads.
It's a radical individualism is what I think. You have the absolute autonomy of the self. In that place, the only rule maker is the self. And in that situation, you self-define. And the demand is everyone see your self-definition as ultimate for you. Well, that atomizes a culture. It blows everything up. There is no cohesive value system holding everyone together. There's no boundaries anymore. I think it's the same problem with the violence. Yeah. There's no guardrails. There's no expectations for behavior or identity or any of these things. And you end up where everything's falling apart. And here you have, I think, this latest individual obviously was mentally losing it, very angry. He was starting to just spiral for years down to where he ended up doing what he did. And he's in a culture that refuses to tell him the truth.
Yeah.
Right. Well, even after what he did, they're still trying to call him by these pronouns, protect that gender identity. Yeah. And what you're doing in sending that message is you're telling everybody else that might be spiraling in the same way, there's nothing wrong with you. Yeah. You don't need to get help. You're just fine the way you are.
If you choose to identify as, if a boy chooses to identify as a girl, that's in a way one of the few characteristics that our culture today will tell you is immutable. Like the fact that you identify that way is built in. You can't get away from it. It's just who you are. And it's so obviously not true. This shooter in Minneapolis said in his journal, one of his entries said, I wish I hadn't brainwashed myself with regards to the whole trans stuff. And that's what it is. Children explore identity. It's one of the things they do. You know, a kid, 6-year-old might walk up to you and say, I'm a pirate. And you don't chop their leg off and give them a peg leg. The trans movement so often tells kids, if you feel uncomfortable in your body at 13 years old, it's because you're the other gender. Or maybe it's because you're 13 years old and everyone feels that way at that age.
Another connection that I'm kind of making with all of this, what you were talking about earlier about just the overall messaging, the negativity, like being ashamed of your country, you live in an awful place, you're being oppressed, be ashamed of the American flag. All of this negative messaging that seems to be coming particularly from one side of the political aisle. Everything, it's, we can call it a death cult because that's what it is. Everything is death and destruction. But a common thread in all of these ideologies is that conservative Christians are to blame. This is the reason that there's a problem. And so if they want to know why we are becoming, we've always been in favor of our Second Amendment rights. If you guys want to know why we're still in favor of those rights and becoming even more so, is because every time you have an issue, it's our fault. Yeah. And we are becoming increasingly targeted. And we're definitely not the party of victimhood, but you're demonstrating every single day why I need to protect myself and why I need to have that right. Because I mean, I'm sitting in church the other day and I don't want to be thinking about if some crazy person's going to walk in, but it kind of feels like that possibility is increasing.
Yeah, that's true. I do rest assured every Sunday in church, there's at least a few dozen people who are carrying and there's a cop outside. So I feel pretty secure, but I have the same thought. Someone might come and try to shoot up my church because people do that. It's happening, seemingly an increasing amount.
Well, and I think on the other side of that, we have been speaking out against, taking kids into these drag queen story hours or into, all of these family friendly events. I don't think any of them have ever worried that someone on the conservative side is going to show up and try to harm people at that event in the same way. Like, we're not going to do that. So it's like, clearly, like we're trying to approach this in a healthy way and help people regain their meaning, their appreciation for their country, appreciation for their rights, to get the mental help that they need. We're trying to correct this so people don't go down these dark paths. So needless to say, we're not the same.
That is an excellent point. And you made me think of this, Samantha, but one of the things that the left so often rails against from the conservative Christian culture is the patriarchy. They claim we're a patriarchy. And, well, if you're going to say one person is the patriarch of conservative Christian culture, it's going to be Jesus, right? Like, that's who the patriarch is. And it really is surprising, if you're looking at it from a Christian point of view, how often political issues seem to be very little more than sinners wanting their sin to be accepted. And Jesus says, no, go and sin no more. And so people hate Jesus.
And it's a strong contradiction to the message that we hear from the world at this point is all sins are acceptable. Whatever you feel, whatever you want to do, you should be able to do. And anybody that disagrees hates you. They're not just judging you now. We've gone from just they're judging you to they now hate you, which is not true. And we're seeing the results of people being taught that, the decrease in God in society, the mocking of thoughts and prayers. The further we go down this path, the worse off we are. And I'm hoping more people kind of make that connection. God's not the enemy, and people who love God are not the enemy.
Yep.
Samantha, you're a great guest. I think we'd love to have you on again. Not surprising that we agree on everything. But it's always nice. Why don't you tell the audience where they can find you?
Yeah, on all platforms, it's Outspoken Samantha. I think on Twitter, it might be Outspoken Sam. I'm not sure. But you can find me there. I'm on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, all the things. So I post regularly, and obviously I talk about similar issues. So if that's your thing, check it out.
All right. That's
Awesome.
Great. That's our episode of the Pop Culture Contrarian with Thomas Sterling Andrew and Outspoken Samantha. Be sure to go to patriotpost.us and subscribe to our free daily newsletter. It comes out Monday through Friday at noon. Like and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. Hit that bell icon on YouTube so you know when we upload a new video. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Samantha.
We'll see you later.
All right. See you later.